So today we're going to be revisiting and breaking down the previous episode uploaded in 2019, which is Jumping Off Giant Rock into Creek. That's the exact title. If you didn't like the commentary that we put on this video previously, we really didn't explain anything and talk about anything we were doing. So we thought we'd go back, revisit it, and explain some of the stuff about this creek spot. This is a spot we've gone to for years. It's a classic spot.
Well, bottom line is, like Kenny said, this is one of our favorite spots from years past. We try to get here most every trip. It's along a path that we have some other swimming spots on, but this is one of the bigger ones, and it's actually, as far as I know, it's the deepest one we've been in. I think at the deepest point of the main hole, it's probably like 10 to 12 feet. It's off the beaten path to where not only is it hard to find, but it's actually hard to get to.
Starting out, we kind of are just jumping off the rock, trying out the GoPro for the first time. Then you see you slipping into the water there. And then you obviously see us jumping off the big rock.
Well, what Kenny was saying, definitely jumping off the rock, but I wanted to add in the one thing with slipping on the rock is something that we run into quite often when we're walking the creeks, swimming, is they're very mossy where it's wet. And definitely something that we had fun with, and I didn't get hurt on this trip. But it is something, if you're doing this, I would be well aware of with the wrong footing or your bare feet, because you can fall and get hurt pretty easy.
Whenever we're jumping on these rocks, like kind of a warning, you definitely want to make sure the water is deep enough at the point there's no sharp rocks, because later in this video you see a very hazardous rock, but we'll get to that when we get to it. But yeah, we basically are jumping in the water using the GoPro to its first kind of attempt in Gatlinburg.
The one where we're looking under the rock there, just to explain, when we dive into the creeks, we're definitely exploring. We're looking for new things. Like I said, enjoying nature at its best in its own environment. But underneath that rock, there were definitely some different places to where you could look deep under the rock. And what was neat was there was actually some places to where animals could actually get up under the rocks where it was dry, where there was an air pocket or whatever they needed to find some place to hide or maybe look for food.
Well, actually, first, this is a shot in particular that was filmed with a really bad camera. It was very hard to get it on the video. But I jumped off a very high part of this mountain here, and I hit a branch on the way down. I don't know if you can really tell. And then I hit the water. I actually hit the bottom, but luckily it was sand. That was definitely an experience. I wish I would have got that better on film, but I did hit the branch on the way down, as I mentioned a little bit. But then we get into the middle of the video where you take over the camera, and if you want to explain a little bit from here.
Sure. I took the camera and tried to swim up and down the creek as far as where the fish were. Definitely got to see different patterns of rocks. Got to see crawdads, little fish, and like I said, you get to see them in their environment. Eventually, as I get up through here, the water is extremely cold, so you can hold your breath for so long, but you do lose that ability. In this hole here, you see the jagged rock that sticks out to me. Most are smoothed over from the water's pressure, but this one was, to me, this means this rock fell in the water here lately because it has a very jagged edge. It's probably like a foot and a half from the edge of the water. So where that's dangerous is it kind of hides there, and if you were to jump off from the cliff, like Kenny was saying, when you're diving in, you want to definitely explore where you're going to land.
Yeah, that is something definitely we mentioned to watch how you jump in, because this is really crazy looking at this more of how crazy this must have came off the mountain, because you wouldn't think there'd be this kind of sharp edges in things. This is a death trap just waiting to happen, because if you were to jump into this water not knowing what was under it, that's how important it is to really check, like we did that one time. If you were to jump in head first, would be even worse, but even if you jumped in with your back or front first, it would be very, very bad.
To the right, my right of this rock, is about a 12 to 15 inch fish, and he's kind of just hanging out waiting for food to come down the creek.
It's probably the biggest one we've ever seen, right?
It's one of them. I mean, we've seen quite a few, but I think this one's up there. He now sees us, so he's a little panicked. He doesn't really have anywhere to go forward, so he eventually figures out how to get down the other way, which is fine. It was a great catch for us to get on video. That creek, for what it's worth, now the creek is huge, lots of miles of creek. We've explored some of it. We plan on exploring more. But there's plenty of big fish like this in there. I'd say primarily there's a lot of small ones. But there's also a lot of things we have not found yet. Because in this hole, like the others, we are looking for the notorious Hellbender, and we did not see him in this shot.
Yeah, which I have a feeling there's a lot of people go to this. Even I guess maybe not a lot, but I have a feeling other people do since we found that thing before. And yeah, then here in the shot you see a suckerfish. There's probably a more specific term to it, but that was definitely a cool sighting there.
Just to add on what Kenny was saying with that suckerfish, there's probably several different types of suckerfish in the creeks in Gatlinburg. But that one there, obviously it's unique color. It definitely blends in with the rock. And it has the certain type of mouth that's different from the other fish that allows it to eat off of the rocks in the bottom of the creeks. But definitely a good find for us.
Didn't see any crawdads at this spot in particular. The last one, we saw a lot more of those.
Okay, so basically what Kenny said there is right. The crawdads, which we probably will get into other videos, but if I had to break down, like crawdads we would see in May and June were plentiful. As you go through July, you see less and less. And you find carcass pieces, like he was saying. And by the end of August, September, you're going to find them, but they're definitely not as plentiful because I believe a lot of things feed off of them
Bottom of the
to
food
survive.
chain.
Yeah, I mean, I could name a slew of animals: otters, raccoons, muskrat, fish. One other thing about too, if you look at like the creek, not only the fish, wildlife, things like that, but the rocks themselves, just to see how they're formed, brings up all kinds of questions. We see some with porous holes in them, which may, this hole here we've seen several years, and I'm convinced myself that this hole actually might change course at times, not only through flooding, but it seems to me like I remember different rocks sticking up, different formations, and then there's, like I said, things and indentations in rocks that you wonder how they were formed.
But yeah, then you just get slow motion shots of us jumping in the creek. And yeah, off to the right, I don't know if we have footage, we could maybe put that in now, of how steep it is to get to this spot. And now you're almost completely downhill. It is such a sharp angle down. Yeah, sorry, we cannot, if we get to 1 million subscribers, we will reveal this spot to everyone. But until then, it's going to be a family secret for the spot. And this is a breakdown of the jumping off giant rock into creek. And are there any closing remarks for this breakdown?
No, he's right. It's a mountain warrior secret for right now. But I will say this, like we've been going there for a long time, probably closing in on, I would say 18 to 20 years. We're getting close to our 20-year anniversary as far as how much we've been there and exploring the creeks. And I would think we've probably explored maybe 10 to 15% tops, maybe lower, of these creeks. And so our plan is not only to continue to hit certain spots that we like, but explore and find new things. But definitely a fun family spot, and really enjoyed it.
Yeah, we'll probably see more of these breakdowns in the colder months, and then once we actually get back to Gatlinburg, you'll see a lot of new clips. But yeah, this is the breakdown of jumping off giant rock in a creek. I'm naming the title exactly so that for the documentation, and we will see you in the next video.